I've avoided making this video for a really long time because when you add all the numbers up, it's very uncomfortable. What's up guys, it's Witty. This channel is about the grinds, the builds, and the journey towards something bigger. If you're thinking of building a BMW like this, you deserve the truth. Let me explain. Online, builds always look cheaper than they truly are. Most of the time people show the parts, but not the full process. So today I'm breaking down exactly how much I've spent on this BMW. A couple ground rules before we start. These are the real numbers. This includes mistakes. This includes parts that are no longer on the car. And also, this didn't happen all at once. This happened over a period of 6 years. Now, I'm gonna sit down when I start talking about this so I quite literally don't pass out. I bought this car almost 6 years ago for $13,000. When I went to go test drive this car, it had 128,000 miles on it, which at the time definitely scared me a lot. But this car was in excellent condition. It didn't have any scratches on it anywhere. It didn't have any lights on the dash at all. It wasn't leaking any oil or coolant from what I could see. And at the time, this seemed like a great purchase. I had actually been looking for a 335 IS for a while. And to be honest, I was looking for one that was white with red leather interior. But the black sapphire metallic with the oyster interior genuinely spoke to me. I chose this car because quite literally it just felt perfect. I was driving home, I passed a detail shop and I seen this car sitting in the parking lot with a for sale sign, quite literally 7 minutes from my house. At the time, I thought this was a great idea. That was until I told my parents. They told me no, and they said they did not want me buying this car. So I did what any logical person would do in that moment, and I went behind their back, went to the bank, got the money, and brought this car home. This is where people often lie, so I'm not gonna lie. The maintenance items for these cars end up being quite a long list. Spark plugs, coil packs, injectors, high pressure fuel pumps, gaskets, coolant expansion tanks, coolant hoses, fluids, a multitude of sensors, and so on. Maintenance for these cars yearly is estimated to be between $1,000 and $3,000 every year. And that's before performance mods. On my car in particular, performance mods do take up a lot of money, but it's nowhere near as much money as I've spent aesthetically. Kind of crazy, right? Starting from the beginning, this car, I had actually owned it for maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month, something similar to that. The charge pipe exploded. As y'all know, factory charge pipes do explode on these cars just because they're plastic. So I went to a local shop and I had a metal charge pipe, a blow-off valve, and catless downpipes installed. Little did I know that they were all off-brand items, and I ended up paying $850 for these items with install. And when I tell you this car with the catless downpipes sounded awful, jeez, dear God. I mean, it was so bad that it got to the point I couldn't even drive this car in automatic mode anymore because of how bad the drone was. I constantly had to drive this car in manual mode, which led me to get into a little bit of trouble. And that is all due to the fact that this car actually had the secondary cats deleted when I bought the car. I didn't know about it, but you know, sometimes those things just happen. So after a few months, I ended up purchasing vibrant resonators from eBay for $65. And I took this car to an exhaust shop and had the mufflers cut off and the resonators installed for a total of $200. After some time, I decided it was time to actually start modifying this car. I ended up purchasing a front mount intercooler from ARM. The front mount intercooler was $500. Shortly after, I noticed the car had a slight misfire, so I replaced all of the plugs with OEM plugs for $100. Not long after that, I decided I actually wanted this car to make a little bit of power. So I downloaded MHD and I installed a stage 2 tune on this car. All in all, now I have $500 I've spent with MHD in order to unlock everything on the app. Not even a full week later, I was racing a big turbo Focus ST and I had an injector get stuck open. And this car was smoking so much out of the exhaust at one point that I literally thought I blew the car up. And I was like, my life is over. I'm gonna have to buy a motor. You know, everything that goes through your head when something like that happens. At the time, I didn't really have a lot of money, so it was like very detrimental that I get this car fixed. Luckily, I had two friends that each had 3 Index 12 injectors each, and they sold all 6 to me for a total of $600, which is an insane steal. And one of the guys actually came to my house and coated all the injectors in for me, which was pretty cool of him. Not long after I got new injectors for this car, I decided I wanted to try to run some E85 blends so this car could actually make power and keep up with higher horsepower cars. The only bad thing with that was I was gonna have to upgrade my low pressure fuel pump. After doing some research for about 2 or 3 weeks, I finally decided on the one I wanted, and I ended up going with the Black Market Parts Stage 3 bucketed low pressure fuel system, and it was $750. Little did I realize that this big increase in power was actually showing the weak points on my car. After this car quite literally tried to kill me and my passenger while on some mountain roads with my friends, as soon as I got home, I ordered some BC Racing coilovers for $1,100. And then I also ordered the Accabono and Zimmerman rotor and pad set for $480. I used to absolutely love racing this car from a dig, but this car couldn't really compete with a lot of my friends because the factory launch control on 335 ISs with the DCT is set to 5,000 RPMs, which is insane to me. I don't understand why they would do that way, or why they wouldn't make it adjustable. So I downloaded XHP and tuned this car's transmission to stage 3, which finally gave me much faster shifts and even adjustable launch control for $550. Little did I know that launching this car would actually end up breaking this car's differential. Luckily, I had a friend with a 135 that has a DCT in it that had a spare differential that he sold to me for $150. The only thing else I had to do after that point was had to buy a used drive shaft for $100. I know it's crazy, I bought a used drive shaft, but have y'all looked at the prices of drive shafts? I had saved up money for a while, and this is about when I finally had the plan. Like, hey, I really want to single turbo this car, and I know I'm gonna do it. I really wanted an exhaust that was gonna sound really good paired with the single turbo, so I ordered the VRSF race exhaust from Colorado M5X, and it was $800. Now, fast forward a few years, because there for a while I didn't do really any performance mods to my car. I was saving every cent so I could afford what I actually wanted to do, the single turbo kit. Little did I know how much money I was about to spend in such a short amount of time. For the SpeedTech top mount kit with the Pulsar turbo, a tile MVR wastegate, and all the other items I bought from SpeedTech, my total was $4,800. Trust me, I know, it's very expensive if you think about it from where I was just coming from. After I purchased the single turbo kit, it was really time to lock in and get every maintenance item completed so that way I could really enjoy this car being single turboed. I ended up ordering a CSF radiator for $150. I ordered a 335D charge pipe from VRSF for $150, a max solenoid from BIG Motorsports for $35, and a max solenoid mount I found on eBay for $15. Then, once we actually started tearing the car apart, I realized I was about to spend way more money than I was expecting. My car needed all new coolant hoses and a new coolant expansion tank. I ended up spending $400 on coolant hoses and an additional $70 on a new coolant expansion tank, which didn't even fit with the charge pipe. So I had to order a 335D coolant expansion tank, which was another $100. And then I figured, you know what? I haven't replaced it yet in my ownership, so I might as well replace it. So I ended up ordering the water pump and thermostat kit from FCP for $480. Then I also noticed I was gonna need a new serpentine belt and pulley soon, so I went ahead and ordered that, and that was $144. And then, you know, I figured if I'm gonna do this, I need to do it the right way. So I ended up telling myself, I'm gonna replace as much stuff as I can, and hopefully I can still afford to eat this month. So I ended up ordering a vacuum adapter in order to do a walnut blast on this car. That was $72. I ordered new intake manifold gaskets for $50. I ordered all new wheel speed sensors for $130, followed by O2 sensors for $200. About that time was when we noticed how much oil was actually leaking from the oil pan, so I had to buy that gasket. That oil pan kit was $210, followed by the valve cover gasket, which was $30, and then the oil filter housing gasket for $70. Then it was time I decided I needed to do an ignition service. It was time to upgrade the ignition system, so I ended up purchasing all new coil packs and one-step colder spark plugs for a total of $255. Right before we finished installing the single turbo kit on this car, we noticed that I would probably need new engine and trans mounts. And since this car is a 335 IS, I figured I would go with the OEM option and get stiffer engine mounts. After spending nearly $420 on engine mounts, we were almost ready for this car to be finished. Now it was time for a custom tune to actually use this single turbo kit. I reached out to CD919 on Instagram and he set me up with everything I needed and gave me a custom tune for $500. So after spending magnitudes of money in just a short 2 months, my goal of having this car single turbo was finally finished. This category definitely hurts, but not as much as all the aesthetic mods I've done to this car. The performance mods done to my car total roughly $15,026. Ow. These mods were not at all necessary, but they definitely added up fast. While this car was on the lift getting the front mount intercooler installed, I noticed that one of my rear wheels was cracked. And at the time, I didn't have the money to replace it as I was out of work because I had just got injured. I had an apartment I had to pay for, as well as all of my other bills. I was basically forced to affirm wheels for this car. I ended up buying Apex ARC8s for $1,700. After I had eventually paid off my affirm payment and got my wheels, I had noticed a lot of E92s on Instagram had carbon fiber pieces everywhere. You know, front lips, mirrors, emblems, side skirts, diffusers. And I wanted to do that, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit and do something that not a lot of people had done. So I reached out to a guy semi-local to me. I ended up having him make me all forged carbon parts. The front lip, the mirrors, the emblems, the rear diffuser, and I ended up spending $1,200 with him. But that's not all he did for me. He later on eventually made me this forged carbon air duct for $150 and also made my one-of-one forged carbon CSL trunk for $1,800. I know it sounds kind of crazy, paying $1,800 for a carbon trunk. At the time, I had the money for it and I was kind of just itching. Since this was the first car I had ever built, I had always wanted to learn how to wrap. So I took the leap. I ended up buying a roll of cheetah satin white vinyl wrap for $500 and I wrapped this car myself. Not that I did good, because quite literally it was pretty bad, but it did teach me a lot of things for the next goal I had in mind. Not even a year later, I decided to change the wrap color and ended up purchasing a full roll of Avery Dennison Gloss Sand Sparkle. That roll of vinyl ended up costing me $650, and to this day, I still love that color. Shortly after that, I had an idea and I really wanted to chase it. I reached out to Conce about their tandem style wheel and asked if they would be able to make me a set that were 5x120 in a 19-inch. And they actually came through, made them, and told me that my set of wheels were the first ever set of 19-inch 5x120 tandems. They ended up selling me the wheels for $1,800. Not long after that, I wanted to do something that was special. I ended up reaching out to a company called Overmodify about having a livery made for this car, and he ended up charging me $350. Shortly after I put that livery on my car, my TikTok slowly started to gain traction, and honestly, I really wish I would have did YouTube videos back then, but I was just very young and I wasn't very motivated. What's going on, guys? Had to make a location change. So here we are, different location, still the same story though. Not long after I had this livery installed on my car, I ended up going to Carolina Stant Shop in Greenville, South Carolina, and had my car bagged. With the help of PSI suspension and airlift performance, we ended up fitting my car with slim double bellow air struts in the front and in the rear and 3P management. For all the parts and install, they ended up charging me $4,300, which, don't get me wrong, I know it's a lot of money. You're like $4,300 for your car to look cool. I was young, okay? And I do plan on, honestly, I hope y'all don't hate me for this, but I do plan on getting rid of these bags and putting this car on proper suspension. Coilovers, upgraded sway bars, all new suspension components, and turning this car into an absolute dream to drive. Not long after they installed these bags for me, I started to notice that the front end of my car felt a little loose. And that was because I had to remove my sway bar end links. So since I had removed my sway bar end links, I figured it was worth a shot to see if it would help with the drivability. I ended up installing the M3 front control arms onto my car, and they were $323. Just a few short weeks after I had had this car bagged, I put it on M3 control arms in the front and added a little bit more camber. I decided it was finally actually time to dip my toes in the real life stunt scene, and I bought my first set of 3-piece wheels. They were Zobber Mesh 3-piece, and I got them from a friend in Charleston for $1,900. Oh, and I also ended up ordering a low glow kit for $300. In October of 2022, after I had finally finished this car, or at least I thought, I took this car to Gatlinburg, and I was actually in my first ever Gatlinburg show. It was Saturday show, but it was still so sick that they actually let my car in that show. That had been like a huge dream of mine ever since I had first made this car static on coilovers. After I got home from Gatlinburg though, I decided that maybe the wrap and livery weren't meant to be on this car. And after a few weeks of one of my friends trying to talk me into painting this car, he gave me the contact to a local painter here in Forest City. After I talked with the painter for about a week on what colors I wanted and everything, he ended up shooting me a price that I absolutely could not turn down. So I ended up having this car painted. And the crazy thing is that he only charged me $500 to paint this car like this. Keep in mind, I ended up spending $700 in material, but in my mind, that's not a bad way to spend $1,200 at all. Shortly after I got the car back from him though, I took my car to have it fully detailed inside and out. The dude ended up charging me $1,200, and not even 3 days later, after I got the car back, there were holograms everywhere, and there was even a spot in the hood where he had almost burned all the way through the clear trying to clean it up. I took my car back to him. I said, "You need to fix this. I'm not paying you anything else." So he fixed it. Not even a day later, all the holograms were back. Everything was back. There was nothing I could do to fix it. At least I thought. And keep in mind, I just spent $1,200 on a paint job and $1,200 on a detail. Like, that's insane. So there for a while, I was honestly ashamed to drive this car around. I didn't like the way it looked. It just, to me, it just didn't, after all this time and money and dedication I had put into this car, it didn't look good to me at all. And so there for a while, I didn't drive it. After all this happened, I ended up going to Hendersonville. I drove my car to Hendersonville, and I took it to my friend Braden's house. Braden now has a detail shop in Hendersonville. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it, so I'm sorry. But he told me he wanted to try to help my paint to see what he could do. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm down. He actually ended up getting it to looking very, very nice. So I ended up paying him $350. I was so hyped to finally have the car looking good again. And then just 2 weeks later, my wheels finally came in. Crazy enough though, I was told a 6 to 8 week lead time. After almost 6 months after I ordered these wheels, they finally came in. And keep in mind, I spent $3,800 on these wheels right here, which were my dream wheels at the time. Immediately right after I got these wheels, I ended up ordering clear tails because I really thought that that was gonna complete the build. So I ended up spending $780 on clear tails. My build was nearly completely done, except for one thing, another livery. The same guy that made the first livery, I told him before I ever even painted this car what I wanted the livery to look like, all the colors and everything. And the livery looked really good, except for one thing. After I installed it on the car and drove to Charleston for Slammed Enough Charleston, it entirely just gave up on sticking. I had spent $550 on a one-of-one custom livery that didn't even stick to my car properly. Basically, as soon as I pulled this livery off, I figured, well, I don't have the livery on like how I wanted, and the car is not completely done in my eyes. So I decided I was gonna order some parts that I've been wanting for a really long time. I ended up reaching out to Colorado M5X to get a full list of items. I ended up getting a forged carbon steering wheel. I ended up paying $650 for this steering wheel. Shortly after I got it, I realized I really wanted paddles because this car's a DCT and it's just nice, you know, sometimes just to flick a paddle instead of the shifter. I also ended up ordering forged carbon side skirts. I ended up spending $600 on those. Also in this order, I ended up ordering these smoked sequential turn signals for $30, these smoked front bumper reflectors for $60, and these double slack kidney grills for $100. So fast forward a good little bit actually. I had just got this car back home after it got single turboed. And honestly, there was a few things I still wanted to do this car. So I ended up taking the turbo off and taking it to a local guy to have it powder coated for $150. While the turbo was getting powder coated, I honestly did not like that big air filter. I know it's safe, but I wanted the turbo guard. So I ended up ordering this pearl white turbo guard for this car for $100. A few months later, I ended up finding one of my absolute dream sets of wheels for a really good price. So me and my fiance ended up jumping in the truck and we drove to Atlanta and back in a day. So that way I could buy TE 37s. I ended up spending $3,000 on these TEs with tires. Around the same time that I bought these TEs, I had sent my OEM headlights off to California to One Vision Performance. Originally, he was just gonna rebuild them so that way they would work because they both had water damage. And then he told me he would give me a pretty good deal on rebuilding them entirely and customizing them to my options. So I spent $2,200 and he ended up customizing them into this. When I tell y'all this number, y'all are gonna say that I am absolutely insane. And I know I'm insane. Trust me. I'm gonna sit down for this. All in all the cosmetic and aesthetic mods I put on this car end up totaling to be $29,743. I can hear my wallet crying from here. Over the last nearly 6 years of me owning this car right here, there hasn't really been a whole lot of mods that I've had to replace more than once, but there has been some mods that I've ended up taking off and selling because my vision had changed along the way. And that's totally fine. And even to this day, there are some mods that I regret. Not that I ever regretted them in the moment, but now that I'm looking back at it, I regret it now. Just because my vision has changed and I realized that those mods didn't belong on this car. And that's totally okay. I like to think of regrets not really as mistakes because at the end of the day, every mod that I've regretted on this car has ended up teaching me something. Whether that be it taught me a new skill, or it taught me something about my car, or it taught me something about myself that I didn't realize at the time. I would say even though there's probably a lot of people that believe mods that I have bought and put on this car and then removed would necessarily be a waste. But me personally, I don't think it's a waste because that work that I did in that very moment shaped me to be the person I am today. I might pass out. So when you add everything up that I've ever did to this car, the total ends up being roughly $57,769. Seriously, what's wrong with me? Dude, I'm telling you, I don't know. Let that number sink in, honestly, because trust me, that number surprised me too. Now, was it worth it? From a financial standpoint, hell no. But from an experience standpoint, I'd have to say, yeah. All these mods I've installed and all this money I've spent has taught me a lot about myself, about my vision, about cars, about how to fix things when they're broken. I mean, this car taught me how to vinyl wrap. It taught me how to install crazy modifications like a single turbo. It taught me a lot more than a stock regular car would have ever taught me. If you're watching this thinking of starting a build similar to this one, don't be scared. Just go in informed. Make a plan, make a goal, and stick to it. You don't need to spend nowhere near as much money as I spent in order to enjoy a car. But if you are going to spend that much money, make sure you learn something along the way. I'm still building this car. I'm still believing in all of my goals. And I know that one day I'm going to look back at all of this and say it was all worth it. Same dream, just new levels. I really appreciate everyone who tuned in and watched this video. And I know it's probably a long one and I apologize. But I just feel like it's my job to get as much information I can out there about the M54 platform. So if you enjoyed this video or you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and like and comment on this video. I'd really appreciate it so much. Thank you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.